Hello friends, in this video tutorial we will be discussing about the classification of IC engines based on various criteria. First criteria is based on types of fuel used. If we are using petrol as a fuel, then we called it as petrol engines. If we are using diesel as a fuel, then we called it as diesel engines. And if we are using any compressed gases like CNGs as a fuel, then we called it as a gas engines. And fourth, if we are using two fuels like CNG or petrol, then we can call it as bi-fuel engines. Second is based on thermodynamic cycle. First is Otto cycle. Otto cycle engines are nothing but the petrol engines. Petrol engines works on Otto cycle. Second is diesel engine cycles. The diesel engines are worked on diesel engine cycles. Third is dual or mixed cycle engines. Now based on number of strokes, we can classify it as 4-stroke engines and 2-stroke engines. This we will study in detail in the upcoming videos. Third criteria is method of ignition. That is, first is spark ignition engines and second is compression ignition engines. Spark ignition engines are also called as petrol engines because in petrol engines we are using the spark plug, whereas there is no spark plug in diesel engines. In diesel engines we are using the fuel injector, and that's why it is called as compression ignition engines. Now based on the method of cooling, if the engine is cooled by the air, then we called it as air cooled engine, and if it is cooled by the water, we called it as water cooled engines. Based on the speed of engines, we can classify it as low speed engines, medium speed engines and high speed engines. Based on number of cylinders, if we are using only one cylinder, we called it as single cylinder engines, and if we are using more than one cylinder, we called it as multi-cylinder engines. Based on position of cylinders, we classify it as first as inline engines, second as V engines, third as radial engines, fourth as opposite cylinder engines, and fifth is opposed piston engines. Let's understand this one by one in detail. So this is your single cylinder engines. If there is only one cylinder, then we called it as single cylinder engines. If there are more than one cylinder, we called it as multi-cylinder engines. Based upon the position of cylinder, we classify it as inline engines. If all the cylinders are in one line, we called it as inline engines. V engines, if the cylinders are arranged in the form of V shapes, then we called it as V engines. In opposed cylinder engines, you can say that piston is moving in the outward direction. Whereas in case of upward piston engines, the piston are moving in the inward direction. Okay. And in case of the radial engines, your piston are arranged in the radially outward direction. So this is how we classified the IC engines based on different criteria. I hope you understand this video. Thanks for watching.